Unipod, the podcast for all things management software.
Hey.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Unipod, the podcast for all things management software. Today we have Glenn Wynsor, which is, did I pronounce that well?
Yeah, that's right.
Which is the managing director of Wisdom, a dental practice management software. We're going to explore a new vertical today. So Glenn, first of all, really, really nice to meet you and see you here.
And you?
Can you start with just introducing yourself and how you got into the management software world?
Okay. My name's Glenn Wynsor. I've been involved with this particular company for 9 years. I bought it as a project, as a turnaround and project. But I've been in business management, I suppose, for about 35 years now, 40 years nearly. For a long time, I was a consultant to lots of other companies, mainly smaller, not always, but mainly smaller, and helped them do a lot of the stuff that they weren't particularly good at doing. I suppose that's what you'd say. Today, they call it fractional. In the day, you were just a guy who did stuff.
Yeah, today everything has a name, right?
Yeah.
You become an expert in everything. Yeah, but
Yeah.
that's nice too. So you say you're 35 years in the business management world. So can you tell us a bit more about how your journey evolved and how you got into what you're doing today?
Okay. Very sadly, for a long time, I was a professional singer.
A singer,
Okay.
wow.
Yep. That's obviously a long time ago in the 70s and 80s. But I'd always been involved in business to some degree. When I left school, I was in the travel business, and I was general manager of a holiday company when I was about 22, something like that, 23. Always with this ambition, though, to do my thing and go off singing. That was my thing. I trained for opera and stuff and all that, like kids did in the day. And but when the business changed in the UK, it was very apparent that the world was changing hugely. The big club scene that was around where you could earn a good living was going and changing. So I got back into the world of business, went back to business college, and then after that had a couple of proper jobs, I suppose you'd call it. But then always wanted to do my own thing, and then started working for lots of other people, as I say, and helping them do stuff that they weren't really. It's not so much they weren't good at. They a lot of the time when you grow a business, you don't really realize what you need, and as it gets bigger and scales a little bit, it's a very different animal from when you started it. So if you make things, you make cups, who knows? By the time if you're successful, and after a couple of years, you're now managing people making cups. You're not making cups anymore, are you?
Yeah,
And
so
so
your role changes.
the role changes, and the dynamic changes, and your responsibilities, and your need to understand the broader picture of a bigger operation. And then, of course, as you scale a little bit more and a little bit more, the legislation may change. What you have to do, how you have to treat people, how you have to do this, how you do that. You need better facilities, better functionality. You need backup plans. You need people that can then help you with all the other bits that you aren't particularly good at, or you don't have time to do. As I say, today they call it fractional. But in the day, then it was just doing stuff for people. And that led me into the dental industry at one point. I ran some practices for some people as a management on the management side. That's how I met the Wisdom people, and I did bits for them on and off because I also had a marketing business, and that worked in dentistry and other healthcare sectors quite a lot as well. And then about 10 years ago, the people who owned Wisdom, who I knew well, asked me if I was interested in taking it because they were looking to retire. It had declined quite a lot for various reasons, needed some sort of full-time attention, and they thought I might be the person that would be interested in taking it on. And that was it. And there
Nice.
we get back to Wisdom.
Nice. So if I understood you correctly, before managing this management software for dental practices, you were helping managers of dental practices.
Yeah,
right?
at one point, yeah, but
Yeah.
along with a lot of other companies, a lot of other people as well. Yeah.
And did this experience with managing dental practices help you better understand the needs that the management software for dental
Yeah.
practices? Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Because
Can you?
the problem with a lot of management software, and I've been involved in everything from very basic stuff to a lot of accounting systems. I was involved with one major accounting system for a long time. And right up to the big ERP companies, a lot of the time, the software and the management processes are very driven by techies who design and develop the system. My feeling has always been when I've been involved in anything, whether you were doing it with an Excel spreadsheet or you're doing it with full software for whatever the element was, it's always been how do users actually use it? What makes sense to them? And a lot of the software in practice management systems is very techie driven, I suppose you'd say. And I always thought there was if you involved the clinicians and you involved the people who knew and used it day to day, then you could probably come up with a better solution. It would work probably better for them. They could learn it easier. It would have all the obvious functionality that you needed to make things work as simple. We all use software now to do everything online. And a lot of the times we get very frustrated. This is everybody. This is not just dentists. You go online to change details about a credit card payment on a site for doing whatever, and it doesn't quite work how you think it should work. Now, you might be right, you might be wrong in the process, but a lot of the time it's not very intuitive to the everyday person, is it?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think that it's very interesting because not a lot of management software companies have this experience in the field that they are working in.
Mm.
And you really come from the dental vertical or from the dental space. So, or at least you had the previous experience with it.
Yeah,
So you probably know your users, right? Do you call them users?
yeah, yeah.
um, Very well. You can, you know, put yourself in their shoes and really understand how they are using your software.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. A lot of the companies that are around that do the same sort of thing in whether it's dental or in other healthcare settings. A lot of the time, their systems, like we say, are designed much more from a techie point of view because techies think this is the obvious way you should use it. Doesn't necessarily mean that's how the everyday user uses it. And so, with a combination of my experience um, from dentistry and lots of other things, of course. And then the people who work within Wisdom, the support people who are all clinically trained as well. They're ex-nurses. The support team are ex-nurses, practice managers. So that means that they know from the real everyday experience how they work. Obviously, they're talking to our customers all the time. So they get a lot of feedback about, this, I don't like this perhaps as much as I could, or could it just do this or whatever. And so we came up with the outline plan for the new system to be very, very user centric, you know.
So, how do you collect this feedback from all your users and implement it into the new system?
I think a lot of it is, as I say, our general manager was a practice manager many years ago, have to say now, and our clinical manager obviously was a practice manager and a dental nurse as well in her
Mm.
day. And so with a combination of that, and then obviously the feedback that you get as an ongoing thing about your system, about the old legacy system, that could give you the tools to then scope a new, much better, much more easy flowing, taking the patient journey, expectations, and try to make it that much more, as I say, user friendly, mainly quick, because people don't have time. And at the same time, because everything was moving to the cloud, that was always going to be a little bit of an issue because healthcare being what it is, and it's very much the number one target for ransomware. I don't know whether you're aware of that specifically, but it is by miles. And it's not necessarily just because of the data, which obviously is personal data, but
Mm-hmm.
within healthcare technologies, um, the problem is if everything goes to SaaS, of course, healthcare can't work if your system's down. So because you have, whereas of course, which is why a lot of healthcare tech is still desktop.
Oh, okay. Because you cannot afford any downtime.
That's right. And so if as healthcare is the biggest ransomware target, and this is ransomware is 60-70% aimed at healthcare tech around the world, because the fact that if it's down for whatever reason, you can't operate usually. You don't know who to call to say don't come in because it's all up in the cloud.
It's a whole
And
mess.
it's and just today, since Friday in the UK, one of the router companies called Draytech, which you may know of or you may not know of, they're a router company, broadband routers. They've had a serious problem where it looks like there's been some issue of whatever nature, and these routers were all going on and off intermittently all the time. And
Wow.
that's happened to thousands of people in the UK over the last few days.
I think this connects to your latest post, right? I saw on LinkedIn something about the cloud, right?
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly. And that's the whole point. What we decided as part of when we were talking to customers of our legacy systems and people just in general, people were and that's going back slightly. That's why healthcare tech, a lot of it is still desktop. A lot of the reason is if it goes cloud and it's down, you're not working. And so we looked at how you could actually come up with a solution that would allow you to operate locally, whether your broadband was alive or not. And we came up with an idea to have some sort of local mini cloud server actually in the practice that's doing the whole thing the same as the cloud does in its own, wherever it is. And so we've created some hardware specifically to run a cloud service locally that is then replicated obviously in the cloud and synchronized. So you can work with or without broadband. You can still work on the same data. If you've got remote workers out in the field doing stuff, they're still working via whatever broadband link they use. And if you're obviously local and your broadband is a bit flaky, in the UK, it's a bit flaky in a lot of areas still. Like we say, you have these problems like they've had over the last couple of days with technology, with broadband. One of the ISPs went down yesterday, apparently, for a few hours as well. So with having this local mini cloud service like we've created in the cloud and local, it means you're just not open to that. And if the main cloud service got taken out with ransomware or some other cyber attack, it is the chance of it being pushed down to the local boxes, the local mini cloud service, is very, very, very slim. So that means you're sort of as protected as you can be. And in fact, the military are copying exactly this same sort of idea in the UK.
Oh, really?
They were picking our brains last year at an event we were asked to attend, and they are doing the same sort of thing. What they want to do is have mini cloud servers across a base running whatever they run
For their
and
management
for their
purposes.
management for all their activities. And if there's then seen to be a cyber threat of whatever nature, they literally want to be able to unplug the things.
Wow.
So they work locally, but they're not connected to the internet.
Wow.
And then when the threat's over, they plug it back in, basically.
Wow. Okay. I
So,
think
but they
this.
still have that resilience, and then they also have this centralized data, the same as everybody wants ultimately, which is why SaaS became such a big thing.
Nice. I think this explains a lot about the healthcare vertical in general and its specific needs. I wanted to ask you, so from my understanding, dental or dentistry is a sub-vertical in the healthcare practice management world, right? And there are some other verticals. I know there is also veterinary management software, and there are also salon clinics management softwares,
and there's all sorts of things, chiropody, osteopathy, and then there are the specialists who are in the real heavy duty stuff as well, a lot of the private clinics and stuff.
So why why do you think dental needs a specific software, and they cannot use the same software like other healthcare verticals or sub verticals?
Okay. The thing about the different verticals within healthcare, they all have different levels of data requirement. And in the dental space, because we work with the NHS, who want a lot of information when you submit for a claim, the data level is significant. It's very different. In America, the dental systems and the management systems are only responding to claims generally from insurance companies, because that's what their dental sector is based on, or cash, of course. Some people do pay for things. So over there, a lot
or
of the
or credit
or
cards,
credit
or
card, exactly, yeah. But money as opposed to
money.
putting
Yeah.
a claim into the insurance company. So in a lot of environments where that's the way it works, a lot of the data about what people are going to do, or notes about a patient and stuff, shall we say, about the clinical the clinical elements of the practice and of the teeth that they're going to do some work on, a lot of that data can be in a relatively simplistic form, a lot of the time in notes. Okay, so it's just generic text. In the UK and some parts of Europe, where they work with a lot of government authorities of one sort or another to pay for dentistry, they want really defined hard data. So your system has to cope with huge numbers of clinical diagnosis and variations on how you're going to treat it, because there's lots of ways of doing the same thing in dentistry, depending on how much you pay, somebody's paying, depending on the types of treatment you decide are appropriate for that particular person, depending on the length of time they want it to last. There's the color of a filling. All these things are very, very different, and the NHS in the UK wants all of this information in detail. So it has to be very data driven, as opposed to lots of text in notes.
So you really have to have all the property fields
Oh
that
yeah.
are okay.
Oh yeah. There's about and it depends which, and in the UK, England, Scotland, Ireland, and Wales are different systems, just to make life really easy for us. um, and
So
so
that
you have to.
complicates things, doesn't it?
Ah, yeah. So
Oh,
there's
you were
4 different
cynical.
systems. Yeah, just a bit. So there's 4 different systems, and they operate and want different types of data, different depth of data at times, different ways it's presented, all sorts of stuff. So you couldn't use a generic healthcare system
Got
in
it.
any shape or form to run a dental practice.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it sounds like it needs to be super specific, all these properties.
It is. That's one of the reasons, just so you're aware, that, and so people in general, because the UK and a lot of Europe is quite complex in the depth of data, shall we say, of hard structured data. That's why American systems that come over to the UK or Europe, who think they're just going to enter the market and just do stuff, they can do that with private dentistry, where you don't require to link to the NHS to some degree, but they can't just link to these other bodies. They have to then almost retrofit and unpick quite a lot of what they've done to redo it so that it's in the right structure.
Oh, but why would Americans want to use UK?
Oh, of course, they want to dominate the world.
uh,
No, I mean
I
they're
always think of it like from the other side, like you
yeah.
always want to expand to the US, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, in the US though, in the US, because of this, as I say, this is very particular to dentistry, because it's very much driven by the insurance companies. Um, as I say, the way that it's structured, the data, I'd say a lot of note. If you go to your general practice, your doctor in most countries, a lot of the information is in notes, isn't it? They're writing up their notes about you've got a wooden leg, perhaps, or whatever it might be. It Whereas in dentistry, you have to define that from some sort of data structure, whether it's drop downs, pictures, icons, palettes of whatever. It has to be very, very narrowly specified.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And
Yeah,
so
yeah, yeah, I
that's what
understand.
makes it so complicated. So bringing American, American software companies are around the world to some degree or another, or even if it's American based because that's the big market, even if it's owned by New Zealand company or an Australian company or what, or a European country for that matter. A lot of the time the focus is on America, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's the broadest system. You really want to take a UK or European system, which would adapt very easily to America the other way.
So, I think the insurance and payments part is interesting because I'm based in Tel Aviv, and when I go to the dentist, I pay usually with my credit card, but I can pay however I like, and then I need to sue my insurance company so they give me back some of the money.
Some of your money.
Yeah, but that doesn't sound like the same process in the UK.
It is if it's a private practice and you're under an insurance. There's variations because in the UK, besides the fact that you can take out, dental health insurance, okay, and do pretty much the same thing. You probably pay for it. You've got a receipt with all of the treatment information, like I'm assuming you have. You submit a claim to your insurance company. They pay whatever is the structure of the claim. In the UK and across a lot of Europe, there are dental plans in place that are run by companies that are similar to insurance companies, but it's a plan which covers up to so much automatically, and they pay the dentist. Okay, but that's
so you come to the clinic and you don't pay nothing.
It could be, or you pay an excess, like there is with most insurance companies. So if you pay for a plan and it covers you for this level of treatment, again, variations depending on what company you've got this plan with, it will perhaps cover you for your checkups, for your hygiene appointments, some level of then actual work like fillings. It could even cover something more sophisticated, in some way. It just depends which you've signed up for, and obviously how much you're paying. But they very often are tied to the practice, so you don't pay. You just pay the bit in between, the excess, as I say, or whatever the difference is, because you've decided I want a better version of whatever it might be, and you might pay an excess and a top up to get them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I understand. I mean, I think for the client, it's a lot more comfortable when you only pay the excess and you don't need to do this.
Pay all of it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So that's nice. So we touched upon it a little bit, but I'll ask you, and maybe you'll have a different answer. So in your opinion, what's the difference between good management software and industry leading management software?
I think the key to everything is really what you get out of there's two things. There's ease of use, isn't there? It's easy to use. I don't have to fumble around. I don't want to I don't want to have to click 50 times to achieve something that should be 2 or 3 clicks. You want speed of use, and that's where, if real users help design it, that can take a lot of the heartache and a lot of the time elements out of it. With what we've created, for example, you can, some people may know what this means. You can chart a bridge, which means you've come into a practice and you've got a bridge in your mouth, and I'm going to put on your chart that you've got that bridge. Okay. With a lot of systems, it can take 15, 20, 25 clicks to actually establish what sort of bridge it is, what's at each end of it, what teeth it covers, what it doesn't cover, all that sort of stuff. With a simple system like we've created, it's 3 clicks. So it's that simple. So there's 2 elements. There's the usability, isn't there? And then what you can get out of the other end with your data, whether you've got dashboards that are giving you really good data about how well you're working, how much chair time people are, and that's what they call it. Dentists make money when somebody's sitting in the chair, don't they? So you need that sort of data. So you want that. And if you're in a group of practices, you want that collated so you can compare one practice with another and start to see where there's weaknesses, perhaps start to see who the guys are who are really good at looking after people, but relatively quickly, so they see more patients. You need that sort of data. So good management software, whatever context, not just dentistry, will always have those two elements. Ease of use for the actual person doing it, and then what do the managers want? The managers want to see numbers. They want to see who's doing well. Intelligence, yeah. But you also want that to be simple as well. You don't want to have to export it to an Excel spreadsheet and do lots of data mining and, and lots of pivot tables and God knows what, just to be able to see what should be relatively basic fundamental information that any good business would like to see.
And that's also the challenge, right? Because technology evolves so quickly and every software is becoming easier than the other one. And users are very demanding, at least from my point of view, as I'm not using a management software, but I'm using plenty of other different software. And if I don't have a specific feature, if something is, I don't know, hidden or I don't like it, I just go on to the next one. Maybe with maybe with management software, it's a bit more difficult because all of the data and you're kind of.
Yeah, exactly.
You're once you choose your dental management software, you're probably not going to change it, right?
Well, the thing is, you'll have a lot of information, and every system, whether it's dental or just general ERP systems or process and production systems, they all have different ways of doing stuff. So changing from one system to another is never going to be the easiest thing to do. It depends on how good you are at taking information out, converting it, putting it back into a new system. That's always fraught. So I think it's the same old thing. And also people get used to what they've got, don't they? They're used to that, even though the next one might be bigger, shinier, cheaper, free, who knows, moving to a different major system is always going to be a challenge for anybody to some degree or another. So you have to do whatever you can to make that simple. But if you give people the right data, if it works, you support them well, you answer the questions when they ask, you're not always getting a chat bot because that's a big problem now with a lot of healthcare companies. They will answer technical questions about their system, but they can't answer anything about the clinical side. They've not been in your shoes, and that's where I think people stand above the norm and become a little bit better for their customers. You're there to help the customers. At the end of the day, the more you help them, the more they'll spend with you, probably the more they'll stay with you and be loyal and give you good reviews or whatever it might be. And I think that's the same with everything. We seem to have got away from the personal touch far too much nowadays. People like to talk to people.
Yeah, nice. And I think it also circles back to the beginning of our conversation where you said that coming from the dental trenches and knowing the dental people and the dental practice and really helping them really helps you help them now holistically, right? Not only on the tech side, you really understand their position. You can be a little bit out of scope with your support. So I think that's an interesting point we cover here for the difference between industry leading management software and
I mean, there's a lot of generic stuff. There's a lot of generic stuff, and you can make it work if that's all you need. It's like everything, isn't it? But I think within most sectors there's good stuff as well. So you don't need to choose average. And you shouldn't look directly at the price. Look at what you want it to do. If you only want to work in a very basic way, you're not bothered about the numbers. You just do the daily grind. You don't really, and as long as you're making a profit, you don't worry. Well, fine. That's entirely your choice. But if you want to grow, if you want to understand how the people who are working for you, how efficient they are, what their productivity is, how much money they make you, perhaps you want to put them on a bonus system and all that. You want stuff that makes it easy to manage that, and if you then become part of a bigger group, which of course is happening in a lot of sectors, veterinary particularly is being very aggressively pulled together by some big VC operations in the UK and Europe. They're taking over lots of practices, those people, they want to know the numbers, don't they? They're not really bothered about the other end of it. So you need this system that can do a bit of both. So, the people who need it get what they want out of it, and the people who are using it at the sharp end, they get the best experience and make life easy for them because they don't have to worry about it. They know it works. They know it's easy to use. They know you support them well. And if they've got a feature that they would particularly like that's not there, we know that they'll perhaps look at it. It's not they'll put it on a list and in a year's time we might have a look at the next thing. Smaller companies particularly will be much more agile in trying to make it easy for the customer.
So if let's say a dental practice that wants to explore new systems and choose the right one, so I intuitively will check the pricing and maybe ask for a demo.
Yeah,
But
of course.
other than that, what are the blind spots that dental practices are sometimes missing and you would recommend them to look into?
I think the support is the big thing. Let's assume all the systems work in whatever way they work. So where's the differential? The differential is how you look after your customer. These things aren't simple. These systems aren't that simple. So the easier you make it, the better. And there's different ways of making it better, as we say, whether it's the process, the journey for the patient, whether it's for the management, whether it's for how you manage the appointment book, because with an appointment book, they block out days for training perhaps, or people on holiday and all that sort of stuff. You need to make it nice and simple for them, and the simpler it is to use, the easier, the more efficient, and then supporting them well, that's what makes the difference, And this is one of the issues, I think, and it's not just dentistry, where the big companies, because a lot have gone AI, chatbots, all the rest of it, that's great for probably 70% of the questions that would come up. But it's the questions that they can't answer where it becomes a real problem. And I think, there's too much reliance on technology for its own sake because it's trendy, isn't it?
Yeah, it's very trendy.
It's very
AI,
trendy. So
chatbots,
that's
automations.
great. And I can sack 2 people or 10 people, 50 people, whatever, because I don't need them to do that. But that usually comes around to bite you at some point, because it really, the AI is great for what it does well, which is, data mining, X-ray analysis, diagnostics and stuff like that. For the more human side, though, it's still got quite a way to go, I think.
Nice.
And that makes the difference between companies that look after their customers and companies that don't.
I think that software companies in general don't have that level of support, or at least that's not really one of their big differentiators. I think your perspective on that is unique, because most of the software companies are proud of the AI automations and all of that.
Yeah.
And
it does work, but the thing is, working most of the time isn't enough for some people, is it? And if you're,
especially in the health,
yeah,
vertical, I assume.
Yeah. If you've got, because again, it's this time pressure, like we say about downtime. If your internet's broken, or there's ransomware, or there's cyber, or there's a system, or a bit of hardware has broken, whatever it might be, you're critical because somebody's standing in front of you, or they're a patient. You're trying to do something now. So you can't put the same sort of support constraints on like you would if I need to phone my credit card company about something that's gone wrong, or there's a charge I don't understand, or whatever it might be. The fact it takes you a while to get through to them, or they'll phone you back, or whatever, or there's a chat bot. Well, there you go. That's part of the game today. But within the healthcare sector in general, there's somebody in front of me. I've got to deal with it now. So you want to you want support. You don't want to have to, you can't say to the patient, they'll get back to me. What's the SLA? Oh, they'll get back to me in 24 hours. Do you mind waiting? That's not real, is it? And so I think the healthcare sector, and this, as I say, not just dental, the healthcare sector, is where, time is of the essence, and support is critical, I think, to do a good job for everybody's sake. Yeah. And
So
especially the patient.
So is it safe to say that you or your company have actual real human relationships between you and your users?
Everybody knows everybody. Yeah. Everybody's pretty much on first name terms with everybody, because that's what makes the difference. You know, the fact you can phone up, you know how some people would be quite reticent to phone up and ask something which probably some people would think was obvious. You know, if you know the support people to some degree or another, you're much more likely to just phone up and say, can you just tell me how to do this? I don't know. You know, without feeling that you're making yourself out to look stupid, because it's you know, you don't want that. So you want people to feel really comfortable that you can phone up, ask within reason, of course, anything that you want that helps them get through their day. That's
And
great.
how does this align, when you want to scale or when you want to grow every new user or every new practice that you onboard, you really need more people to support them and to.
Yeah, yeah. I think there's two things. If the software doesn't have huge amounts of faults, as in technical faults, that's a big help. And of course, no software is perfect. I mean, there's no point saying ours or anybody's is perfect in every way. But if you take if somebody phones up and there's a problem, fix it. You know, don't put it on a list for next January, when we'll do a load of stuff and fix all sorts of things. Try and fix it. So if there are issues, fix it. And as you then scale, if the stuff works, it's then more about the relationship, isn't it? Somebody wants a bit of help to do something. You're not taking calls because something doesn't work. That's the worst thing of all, because it's frozen. It doesn't work. It's fallen over. It's given the wrong answer, or whatever it might be. You need to be very mindful of, customer experience, and the fact that if they say it doesn't do that, find out why. Try and fix it. That's at the core. And that's the problem when you scale, of course, because there's much more process driven as you scale. But if you get it right, then you can do really well. And as you scale, you don't need hundreds of people, because your software basically works well. And you're then helping people to do their job. And that's the key for us.